finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Hi, everybody. This week we have super fun interview where Tim and I tag team up with another couple to talk about all things marriage. We did this like in our first year. We did some stuff on marriage, and it's really an important part of health because if your marriage isn't right, you ain't right.
Well,
if your wife's not happy, nobody's happy.
Right, and if I don't get to have Corvettes and Trans Ams, I'm not happy. So it's amazing how that goes around. But it is. We've found some interesting feedback from other shows, etc. And we never really considered this being because we take it sort of for granted. But the fact that we actually like each other, we're both doctors, and we've been married for 30 years is apparently a selling feature of BS Free MD.
Imagine that. Well, before I give you a little hint at who's to come, our sponsor this week is, again, Michael L. Relvis from MR Insurance. And he is a CFP professional and insurance agent committed to helping physicians nationwide with their term life and disability insurance needs. He provides an objective, transparent, and education-focused process that aims to help physicians make prudent decisions and avoid overcomplicating things. He exclusively offers on-occupation disability insurance policies for residents, fellows, and attending physicians. We really like Michael and know he's got your best interest at heart when it comes to disability insurance. We know he'd be happy to help you with whatever your needs are, and he has helped us when we reached out to him very quickly. So you can find him at bsfreemd.com/MR Insurance or contact him at 1-800-817-4522. So we have today as our guest Dr. George Naum. He goes by Jeep, which is pretty cool, and his wife Vanessa. They've been married pretty much 30 years, just like us, and coaching married couples for over 25. They have started coaching full-time, and they have a website called bestfriendsagain.com, as well as a book out called What's Forever For, A Physician's Guide for Everlasting Love and Success in Marriage. It's on Amazon. It's great. Vanessa's been doing marriage counseling and coaching for over 25 years, and together the two of them have some really great insights, and we have a great discussion. So we're going to dive right in. Okay, I'm super excited to have you both here. Excuse me. We have Dr. Jeep and his wife, Vanessa Naum, who are both certified marriage coaches and have been, I think, married almost 30 years as well, right? Just like Tim and I. So we're kind of twinning. And Dr. Jeep's been retired from practice for a little bit, but they're both helping couples with marriage, overcoming difficulties, and now coach them. Also have a book out, which we'll get to. But thanks for being with us here today. We are so excited and honored to talk with you.
Thanks for having us.
We are stoked. We are stoked to be with you guys, and we can't wait to have fun with you guys.
That's right.
We are what this is going to be.
We're going to have fun on a sometimes sad, serious subject, but marriage should be fun, and we're here to help people make it better.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you came to the marriage coaching world.
And like you, Tim, you were grew up in a physician marriage, and so did I. And with me, my father was their relationship, unfortunately, wasn't really good. My dad was a bit of a narcissist, let's say, and took advantage of a lot of things with the status that he had, and he would use that on my mom, and really didn't think really well about how all that affected her. So I could go into it a little bit deeper, but I started feeling, knowing that I was going to be a physician, that it was going to be different. That I was going to be responsible for having that mutual respect. And so as time went on, I started to gradually have a desire to do that more. Medicine was always first. But then Vanessa and I got together, and she had a lot of the same desires that I did. And so I went into family practice. Family practice for me was all about relationships and developing relationships from grandpa and grandma to grandson, granddaughter. I was just loved that. And so this was when I decided to do this full time, this was a natural transition to do that and getting the same kind of fulfillment as doing that. And it's just it's a labor of love, really. It's a joy. Honey?
Outstanding.
Yes.
So where did you come from, Vanessa? I mean, I assume he didn't meet you just at the bar or something.
He
That's
didn't.
not where I met my women.
I grew up in a very traditional Italian family and extremely conservative, and you can just imagine the control. And I always had ideas of what my dream husband would be like, and unfortunately, I married my first husband and he was a disaster. That relationship, I married my father, and we tried to work on it, but there were addictions involved, and I just felt, to save myself, we needed to end that relationship. And a few years later, I met Jeep, and of course I had my list of things that I was going to check off, and I had come away from that relationship pretty traumatized, and realizing that I'm setting the bar a little higher. And next time, I pretty much husband by design. I had an idea of what I wanted, and he filled a lot of those boxes for me, but then he was willing to work, and he was willing to do, we crafted our own relationship out of what we both wanted and needed. And I couldn't ask for a better man.
I thought I filled all the boxes.
Maybe not all of the boxes.
So how much? Because I think the box ticking is incredibly important. Okay,
Oh,
but I think that there is a dark side to that. All right, which is the everyone has needs, and it's important to find a partner that can meet your needs.
Correct.
But you're a team, and it's not that because with some of the stuff that May and I have gone through, but yet at the same time, it's not that they're supposed to make your life better.
Correct.
It's that right, and so
Right.
clearly there's a lot of really important things you need to think about before you get into a relationship.
Absolutely.
Especially for young people, right? Like,
right.
Do you believe the same things spiritually? Do you believe what is politics a big deal? If it is, do you believe the same things? Do you believe? What do you think about having kids? How many kids would you want to have? How are you going to? I mean, a huge thing. How are you going to divide work / home duties / is one a spender, is one a saver? Like, all those things are really, really important. And one of my best friends recently got remarried a few years ago, and he was asking me these questions about, what about this and what about that? And I said, look, what's really, really important to you? Because you have a chance to do this right this time. So what's really important? So all of the things that you have to have, they don't have to be perfect, but they have to be enough. So she has to be, smart enough, hardworking enough, spiritual enough, pretty enough, like whatever it is. But then what are the game changers? Because you can find lots of people that fit those, molds. but what's going to be the differentiator? And it was fascinating because for him, it was fitness. It's if I don't have somebody that's into fitness, they're not going to fit into my life because it's way too big of a deal to me, and I'm not changing that. And I was like, okay, perfect. Then
Yeah.
probably searching for women in the CheetosDate.com would not be where you would want to look.
And you would be surprised how many folks have not taken the time to understand themselves, to understand what they want, what they need, and then understand the dynamic of a relationship. When you bring two individual people together and you marry them, in essence, like you said, that is a team. So instead of your need and my need, we develop our needs and we learn, how you do it as well. When you've been married for 30 years, you know that as you travel through life, you're able to adapt. You understand each other more. Hopefully you have more empathy. These are all the necessary things that make up a marriage.
Part of the problem, and you kind of alluded to it, Tim, is things that you should be talking about before you get married. And really, the state of premarital preparation is pretty woeful. And we've found that over the years because we've coached engaged couples as well. And instead of talking about or being overcome by physical attraction, instead of talking about, well, let's go to the movie, let's go to dinner, you're talking about superficial things. But when you get engaged and you've made an initial commitment before putting on the rings, exactly what you said, you need to be talking about, okay, are we going to have kids? And if we have kids, how many are we going to have? Are you going to work? Are we both going to work? Are you satisfied with where we are now? Or are you going to move with me if my job goes to another part of the country? Is that okay? Or do you have family roots here and you don't want to leave them? And these are all important things that unfortunately are neglected. And too many times couples will say, especially if it's an issue that they're uncomfortable about, they'll just push it off and they'll make the cardinal mistake statement, which is, oh, it'll be different after we're married. And it never.
I did that. No, I'm guilty.
It will be different after you're married because the stuff that irritates you now will irritate you.
Will be worse.
10 times worse.
Right.
If you thought it was a little bit of chafing, it will become a belt sander.
Yes. Are you talking from firsthand experience or not?
No, I'm talking. Yes, I am. I'm talking about being a belt sander.
Oh, I thought you were talking about getting sanded. Diamonds sharpening diamonds. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
That's what we are. We were iron sharpen iron. We had that in our wedding vows. But there's a lot of belt sanding on your back that happens too. That people don't want.
Let me give you a just an example of us, and that's one of the things that we do in our coaching is we model things that have happened to us so people can understand, well, how do you know about that? Well, because we've experienced it. And we had an issue with the number of kids we wanted to have. Vanessa was about having one. I came from a big family and always had playmates, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. It was great. And it was always my thought that if you could help not having an only child, meaning if there wasn't something physically, medically wrong that you couldn't do that, or, I would understand. My mother always would tell me one of the biggest regrets was she didn't have a brother or a sister growing up. And so I felt like, I wanted to have 2 or 3 kids. We argued about this, and it would end up with her crying and then me feeling bad. So we just would push it down the road.
And this was before we got married.
And so we pushed it after the rings were on. And like you said, it was worse.
Yes.
It was worse. And it caused a lot of, a lot of hard feelings that, that didn't need to happen. We were able to come to a little bit of a compromise in that, but that is a major issue that should have been resolved before we got married. And that's just an example of what happens to couples, especially dealing with addiction, that
And-
you think, boy,
Right.
he's going to
Would
be
you?
better.
So I'm going to jump in and just say, so do you think that those kind? I mean, that is a major issue. For us, it's interesting that we didn't sort of talked about it before we were married. Obviously, it came up about kids. I was kind of. Tim was like all about the family, and I'm like, I don't know. I could take him or leave him. I've had enough babysitting when I was younger. I'm kind of done with my child raising years, honestly. But, and then when we were married and started talking about it, I'm like, I don't feel ready enough. I don't feel old enough or responsible enough. All these excuses because I didn't really want to have kids at that point. And for us, it wasn't a really head-to-head issue, though. I think it was, me just needed a little more persuasion. But what I'm trying to get to is there are some things that you do need to resolve those before you get married. But what do you think about? I mean, sometimes it just depends on the relationship and marriage evolving, you growing together as a couple, then those work out. I mean, how set do you think you really need to be with those big ones, like the money, the career, the kids? I mean, should that really be worked out ahead of time?
I believe it should be.
Okay.
I believe it definitely should be because, when you drill down and you see why do marriages fail, sex, money, and as human beings, and of course, two different people coming together, he's not always going to agree with a feeling that I have or a value that I have. And that's where just having empathy. And then what we tell couples to do is make a decision in love and put yourself in your partner's shoes and try to experience that feeling so that you don't just have your head in the game, but you're really feeling them. And then make a decision. And sometimes, as you well know, you do have to make decisions in love, right? And so the kids topic for me was big. And one of the major reasons why I was afraid to talk to him about it was I felt that I was afraid, and I felt that maybe he wouldn't want to marry me if I told him I only wanted one child. And then I thought, well, we'll be able to handle it, right? And like you said before, there's the honeymoon period. There are stages of relationships, and then you have that honeymoon period. And at that time, my mindset was, we can move mountains, right? And then once you come out of that and reality sets in and life smacks you in the face, your feelings and thoughts are a bit different.
I think, May, that the decision that you have to come to for yourself, is this a deal breaker? How significant, how important is this? And it's going to be uncomfortable to work this out, but if you wait and it's a deal breaker for you, and you've got this thought that you're somehow going to be able to work this out, and you don't, then you're dealing with divorce instead of a broken engagement.
And just what to Tim's point, there are some things when, like, you have to have your lists of absolutes and things that don't matter. And for some people that would be a deal breaker, and others it's like, well, it's negotiable. I'm like, I don't know. And then there's I haven't even thought about it. These things about myself or the other person that I don't know that need work as well, which we'll get to.
I was relatively ambivalent, actually, about kids. So the fact that we were both kind of open to it, but not necessarily, it wasn't really a huge deal. I mean, the stuff that was a huge deal to me is, are you willing to live, like we grew up in Canada, we're educated there. Are you willing to live like hundreds or thousands of miles away from your family?
Mm-hmm.
And, for May, it's like nothing. She's like, yeah, absolutely. This is what I want. I want to be able to live in the forest, and let's be close to mountains, whatever. I'm like, perfect. Because for me, location was all about geography and being able to be a country doctor. I wanted to be a country doctor. So did she. and geography was a huge deal. But I mean, another girl I dated who was fine and everything,
Who didn't make the cut?
Well, no, but the fact is,
Well said.
that's right. She was not to put her on the practice squad, but anyways, no. But the thing is I knew that she was never ever going to leave her family, because her family ties, they had a family business, all of these kind of things. That was a non-negotiable. So really, it wouldn't be like. And for me, it was the separation and making my own family was a huge deal, and I maybe couldn't even voice that 30 years ago, but that was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And otherwise, to marry her, I would be being part of her family, really, which is fine, but that was never my goal.
Right.
So, one of my very good friends, very wise person, he says, I think you guys are great and you're great together, but your lives are two freight trains going in the opposite direction. So it's just not going to work. I mean, you're in medical school, you know exactly where you're going to be for the next, 4 to 6 years. And she has this totally different commitment.
It's totally different life.
But for other people, it's like, yeah, sure, I'll be, they don't care about that. I mean, it's what are the deal breakers?
Absolutely.
And I think this is really important. It's the preamble, the courtship, the dating phase, the figuring it out phase, and probably doesn't get enough attention. Honestly, it gets to the which we'll get to. What are the big stumbling blocks in marriage? The things people fight about? How do you communicate? But it's even before you get to marriage, is really important. And we've done premarital groups, home groups with people, counseling / coaching, I guess it's really called. And I know that's what you do professionally now. So I think that doesn't get emphasized enough. I think through the church it does, but the importance of knowing yourself and what you want and need and bring to the table, as well as what you're looking for in a partner, and having your eyes open. So what would you say to that? Like, I mean, obviously recommendations for people to do that, but the best ways to go about figuring out what you really need. I mean, do we write a list down? Do we do his needs, her needs book? What do you guys suggest?
It's amazing because we've been working with.
That's our next book.
Yeah, we've been working with somebody that's something that was really never thought about. And as I explained, I was engaged before, and thankfully, kind of like what you said, Tim. Your friends and probably your family too see you going like freight trains in different ways, but you're caught up in the relationship and you're not thinking objectively. Obviously physical attraction has a lot to do with that, and this, the oxytocin type feelings, and so you're not looking at things objectively. And I had that. This person that I was engaged to, that I was going to be married, she wanted me, but she didn't like to go out with my friends who were important to me. She didn't want to go to family functions, and that's something that was extremely important to me. But I just well, I'm going to go through with this. Well, fortunately, we had a disagreement, so we had some separation. But my friends and family were saying, you guys aren't right. You're making a mistake here. So one of the things that I have found is that if everybody but you is saying this isn't right, most of the time they're right and you're wrong.
So those are big red flags that people should pay attention to. Not, yeah.
So yes, know yourself, what you want. And ideally that happens as you date and you have a relationship and you say, okay, this is what I can stand. This is what I can't. And so you learn from that. Your next relationship, for lack of a better word, you call it's like practice. And so you see what it's like. You're saying, okay, she's exhibiting or he's exhibiting some of the same stuff, and you don't let it go on, and you move on. I'm not saying you have to have 4 or 5 relationships, but learn from the ones that you've been in. And too many people don't do that, and they keep doing the same things over and over and over again. And so you don't learn anything, and then you get engaged, and those things are difficult, or for one reason or another you don't have the courage or the vulnerability to bring it up. And it's a real problem, because it could have been prevented if you were not only honest with yourself, but honest with who you're with.
Well, and here it goes another step, which so many people don't know what they want, because their lives, it goes back to the, I've quoted this lots of times, that retrospective analysis that they did in the UK, where they interviewed hospice patients, and they said, and they, categorized regrets, right? Because if you have 0 regrets, then you didn't try.
Right.
And it's fascinating, because the number one regret was living your life based on what other people thought you should do, not what you thought you should do. So, and then you take like today's, people that are a generation or 2 generations younger than us, and their entire perception of themselves, for some people, has been shaped by social media. So they have this complete confusion of what they want. And then you add into it, like, what pornography does to, 19-year-old men who now need Viagra because they've been so desensitized that they have 0 game when it comes to actually trying to seduce a woman in a way that's,
they don't know how
beneficial.
No,
They have no
no.
They
game.
don't know
I mean,
how.
no game. You got no game.
Right.
And it's fascinating, because like with our children, we have been really, really fortunate in that they've essentially abandoned social media by the time they were done with high school. They just gave it up.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of live. They read the news, and our son's military, so he, he's Mr. Geek Mo out on all that.
Bravo.
But it's true, and I think of.
But they're just like, none of that really concerns them. So they have this entire part of their life where they're free to go, okay, well, what do I want? What do I need?
Yeah.
And it's really been fun to be part of that, like, and to meet their, like our daughter's had a couple different serious relationships, and it's like, man, she seems to choose wisely and reject wisely, which is, that's mission accomplished so far.
I taught her to be picky.
Yeah, she's learned that behavior off of you guys. And there aren't enough successful marriages out there that are modeling what a real life marriage is like. There are too many divorces. And so then when that, a child that grows up in a divorced family, what is that person going to, what's in their mind? They're going to repeat that same behavior. And so it's kudos to you two for modeling what a good relationship is all about to them.
And it's in what it does, and we've dealt with this. It when you've got this mindset that the type of person you are is what social media says that you should be, and it's just another layer that you have to get through, and it's horrible. Thankfully, our kids are the same way. We have 2 girls and a boy, and our son's still home, and he has gotten that same, just like your kids have had. It's like, Dad, this is so awful. I hate this. If I didn't have to use it as a form of communication occasionally, I wouldn't do it at all. But I certainly don't listen to any of that. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to buck that kind of, well, this is what everybody else is doing, so I should be doing it too. And to be able to stand on your own against the tide, it's a great thing to behold. And I can see why you guys are you're happy about that and proud of that, because you should be.
I mean, I just think we haven't done any group counseling for a while, or coaching, so I can't I mean, what do you say? Because you're in it now, and your kids are about the same age as ours, and you're coaching to people. Life's so different, right? Because there was no dating apps. I mean, you had to meet face to face. You had to talk
Right.
on the phone, write letters.
You actually had to
communicate.
have game.
You actually had to communicate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have family members, friends who are close to my age and single and doing the old dating apps, and the whole world is different, and people have there's cool stories, and that, it's different. So, but what is there any tips, tricks that you guys have? I mean, because people are going to use things like the social media.
No, everyone
and
is. Like there's dating apps, and then there's Tinder. So that's different.
Yes.
But
so I'm trying to get at, what do you coach to people as far as, trying to communicate in the real world versus the apps and the social media and personal expectations of, what we all see that's out there and what's reality.
It's really, it's foundational. You need to go back a little while and say, okay, well, when did you start dating, and when did you become aware of what was important to you in a partner? Did you just date for a while? Is it something that you really have ever given a significant thought to? And unfortunately, a lot of relationships are, they're superficial. They're a lot of them are physically based, and there's not what you really want and what's important to you in a relationship is not something that you really think about. So you need to go back to that and say, when did you start to become aware that you wanted to be in a relationship for longer than, say, a date or two? And so you go back to that, you ask them about that, and then you build from there.
What's your why?
Yeah.
What's your why?
What's your why?
I love it.
Is there a why?
Well, I want to have 10,000 followers on Instagram.
Something superficial like that. It's just, or what even beyond that, what's important in your life? What do you strive that you want to achieve? Is it important for you to have a partner, a mate for the rest of your life? Or do you have this attitude that marriage is it a throwaway kind of thing? Oh, well, if it doesn't work, we're just going to call the lawyer and that's it, and split the kids, and just so you have to figure all that out first. And we do a lot of that foundational work and build as we need to. And oftentimes they're saying, oh man,
the insights.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And so personal insight, self-reflection.
Obviously, I'm sure where you probably get to this point where couples are having trouble, and then you have to kind of go, okay, let's dial it back and let's go back a notch and start kind of from there. I had an epiphany there as Jeep was talking, which was, if you're not living for something bigger than yourself, why would you be attractive to anybody else? Because that means you're living just for yourself, which means you're probably going to attract a partner that's living just for yourself. So you have two people that are trying to get as much as they can out of the other person rather than actually, May and I have always said this, the relationship itself, like 2 + 2 = 5. The relationship itself is way bigger than the sum of the parts.
Absolutely.
And you're striving for something, whether it's, like for us, I mean, it's our faith. I mean, that's what is the foundational part that brought us really together. It's like, well, we're living for something bigger than us. So it's not just about me. And, when we would counsel other people, they'd ask about, living together before you got married. And I'd say, look here, I don't disagree. I disagree with it, but not just because God says so. Like that's an easy way to answer it, but because you're setting yourself up for disaster. Because this idea that we're going to see if we're compatible. No, I can answer that question right now. You're not. Okay? Because no one's compatible. So this idea that you're going to test the waters says this relationship's about me. It's not about us.
Exactly.
Because we're going to test the waters. No, you're not going to test the waters. You got to figure out your own crap. You got to do the training that you need to do. You're going to put the parachute on, and the door of the plane's going to open, and you're going to freaking jump out. And it's going to be at least that scary.
But snoring is a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah, well, too bad.
Tim, when you say that, man, it gives me chills, because that's exactly what it's about. And you just want to exist, and you don't have any higher goals. Is there any desire for you to make a difference, or are you just in it sponge literally everything that you can get from another person, from relationship to relationship to relationship? And if that's the way it is, well, there's no wonder that you're continuing to have issues, because you've not dealt with that, and you've not resolved that. Because until you do, there isn't going to be a relationship, because you're not going to meet oftentimes that same kind of a person. And where are you going to go with that? The answer is it's going to be like a putt putt stop, putt putt stop, putt putt stop, and then finally it gets to stop.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you see as I mean, I know you counsel a lot of physician couples. So the popular narrative is, okay, well, you're both doctors, you should have everything figured out. And the answer is no. We're actually really specially trained. We don't know jack about a whole bunch of stuff, because we spend our entire lives learning like one thing. So what do you see as sort of themes? Is there a common theme? Is it money? Is it separation of labors? Is it,
You're asking just in physician couples, or
I'm asking in professional couples specifically, because I think for a lot of our listeners that aren't doctors assume that we have special knowledge because we're doctors. And the answer is we don't. I mean,
absolutely. Lack of connection. Everything's great right in the honeymoon stage, and then life kind of takes on reality, and then you get very, very involved with your practices, and outside demands are calling you in one direction and your spouse in the other direction, and then you actually end up spending more time apart than you do together. And when you come together, it needs to be a premium time.
And
like sacrosanct.
And I'll kind of dovetail on that with connection. And then I'll give you an example for us. But one of the biggest things that we see is, because of the way the medical world currently is, we, as physicians, we can go to the office. You never know one day or another what extra thing, what crisis, especially with COVID, that you're going to have to deal with responsibilities can change exponentially from day to day to day. So that is so huge, because what it does is you're so consumed that when you walk through that door, and I can tell you it was that way with me, is you're numb and you need to decompress. And so I would come through the door and, having gone to work at 7, come home at 7, sometimes 9 o'clock. And initially Vanessa ran the office. And at the same time, she was mother. And so she would go pick up the kids from daycare. She'd bring them home. She'd start dinner. So she's doing all this stuff. And I'm walking through the door, and like, I'm singularly focused on the chair in front of the TV. And so whatever it is on TV, I'm going to sit there and watch it and just kind of like, and I'm not going to be cognizant of what's going on around me. I'm going to be oblivious. And so I did that enough times, and Vanessa spoke up and said, hey, pal, we're in this together. We promised that we were going to raise our kids together. We, this is a team. It's a team sport. And so
and I'm doing all the work
most
on the
of it,
home front.
and that's to go back. That's the kind of issue.
Mm-hmm.
My dad never gave my mom any credit for the things that she did, like having, keeping up a house. Oh, that's not as important as what I do, and it's constantly being demeaned.
Well, it was more about raising 5 children alone.
Yeah, that and so
than keeping a house.
She said that to me enough, and it finally got through my thick skull that you've really got a point. And so, when you have kids, it's you have to. Sometimes dinner, it's somebody eats then, somebody eats then. You don't have the kind of a family table that you necessarily want, but so. I realized that I wasn't taking as much of a part in my kids' lives, and it really gives me when I think about this, for the fact that she made me aware of that. I would have missed out on so much. I would have missed out on reading books and holding them and in a rocking chair and all of that stuff that are so meaningful to me now, because our daughter just got married and she's out of the house. We have another daughter out of the house, but it's just awful. And she had the courage to continue to say, "Hey, come on."
It took a while.
I was going to say, and how did she communicate that to you?
It really took a while.
With a frying pan?
She could have, and I would have deserved it.
Yeah.
Right, but again, it's
so it's two things, right? It's being aware of each other's needs, and it's communicating those needs, and then how do you address them and make
so how we worked it out was I said, "Okay, honey, I'm gonna I'll come in, I'll decompress for an hour, then we'll eat, and then I'll take the kids up, get them in bed, get their baths, and then she would be downstairs finishing cleaning up, and then I'd say, "Okay, tell me about your day. What issue did you have today?" And I would remain focused. And like she said, it took some time for that to happen, but it did. But without that communication, without her having the courage and me being vulnerable enough or receptive to understand that kind of a solution wouldn't have happened.
And what I was doing in between, I was suffering in silence. Yeah. I was building resentment against him. I was angry. What's going through my head is, he's the one that wanted more than one child. I knew I could only take care of one child. I knew I was right back when I said the child issue. And it took negotiating. It took negotiating, like, here we are as a couple. This is a couple situation. It's a couple problem. Now let's try to solve it as two, instead of just what I want or what you want. We have to reach some type of agreement.
That's what always blows my mind. Like I've talked to lots of friends about this, and what am I supposed to do with this problem? Like, she doesn't get whatever. I said, well, you negotiate it, because everything in a marriage is negotiated.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I got 6 heads, because it should just be like some magic thing.
It should be figured out.
And I'm like, it's a relationship. It should be negotiated. Like, how do you deal with business partners if there's an issue, or if you're going to do an acquisition together, or if you're going to go into a negotiation with another business? It's absolutely no different. And the other side of that is, you have to communicate in a way with which the listener understands.
Yeah, I was just going to jump on that and say that,
Well, and what I would say to May,
we finally learned that. We learned how to.
She would be like, look at me when I'm talking to you. And I'm like, you're still wearing clothes. So. If you wanted me to focus my attention, there's a way to do that. So, but.
Really? It would be that easy.
Which attention would that be? That's not the attention I want.
Yeah. So But you know, it's fascinating because you can say true things in a way that are so unbelievably damaging and hurtful.
Yeah.
But then you can say really, really true things. Like in this situation, if you say, look, I need something from you. I need support because we have 3 kids. And I know that you need support. Tell me what you need when you get home from work because we really have to do this. And the other side of it that's really, really true is you don't want to miss this. The window of opportunity you have with little kids, and you're a better man than passing out in front of the TV every night.
Yeah.
You know, or you could say, you dumb bastard, you're wasting our marriage, which may be true, but entirely unhelpful.
Right.
Yeah, and think about this. Think about this. I didn't mean to interrupt you, May. But you know, we focus on communication skills and getting things across to our patients, and somehow when we get home, we forget how to do that.
Objectivity flies out the window.
It's like, wait a minute. What happened between here and there?
It's true. I mean, we're taught. So we should, I mean, as physicians and healthcare people, we should know better, right? Because we're taught to communicate it in a way that the patient understands. Use terminology they understand. Words, talk on their level. But you're right. When it comes to then us and our relationships at home or with friends, it's turned around and it becomes selfish. Like, well, they should know what I'm thinking. And if they knew me and loved me, they would figure it out instead of communicating it in a way that they understand. And sometimes that literally means me saying, okay, Tim, you know, when you're working on a car and this happens, and then the light bulb goes off and he's like, oh yeah, I get it. So I don't know why if we just are, you know, because we're human beings.
It's emotion.
Selfish and lazy. Yes, but
it's emotions. It's our emotions get
and there's that word, assume. And you know what assume does. Makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
And that's what it does.
I think for people that are listening, you know, but that aren't medical and haven't learned that communication tactic skills, it is really just boiling it down to sometimes communicating to that person in a way they understand. And I guess sometimes you have to just look at it as like, how would, you know, you talk to your kids, you don't use fancy terminology, you're on their level. And with your partner, you have to figure out what they relate to, what they understand. And it's about building that person up, not trying to tear them down negatively, and to pick words that build them up, and turn it into something positive. But it's definitely a learned skill because even the best of us that are really good professionally at communicating can suck at it in our home life. So it's practice.
And that's part of, you know, that's a chapter in my book is talking about words. Because, you know, you can build or you can destroy. I mean, it's real. You can say something that can carry hurt in somebody's heart for years and not even realize that you said it. And, you know, one of the things I
did it to him.
What?
I said something that hurt you pretty deeply, but then I learned from my mistake, and it was while we were dating.
Go ahead.
It was pretty powerful. Yeah.
Go ahead.
But it doesn't even have to
tell them. So you guys are going to be blown away when I tell you this. So remember that Italian hot-headed family I grew up in? Mm-hmm. Very critical, right?
Uh-huh.
So Jeep and I had been dating maybe 6 months. We were dressed up to go somewhere, forget where, went into a coffee shop to get some coffee. I had on green suede shoes that were my absolute favorite, and he spilled coffee on them.
Oh.
And without thinking, flying out of my mouth, I said, I can't believe you're a doctor because sometimes you can be so stupid. See?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
How about that?
But I'm laughing because I'm like, that would fly out of my mouth too. Just kind of like, that's what I'm feeling. So I'm just going to say it.
It's the green shoes though. Right? Like I put it in
suede shoes. I'm just like imagining them right now, kind of getting all excited.
I put it into the terms of my 50-year-old Corvette that's never been painted. It has the paint that General Motors put on it.
Oh, I know about it. He's
and I'm
always
like,
yelling at me
be
about
really
touching it.
Don't. No. That's for looking. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Yeah. Okay, you
just
can
an old
relate
car.
to my presentation. But what I did was thankfully so, we went into the car. He was so quiet. He was angry but he was quiet, like almost the silent treatment kind of quiet. And he said, I don't ever want you to speak to me again like that. So I made a conscious decision. I think he may have said, my family didn't speak to each other that way. And if they did in your family, I can't help that, but I don't want it going on between you and I. So I made a conscious decision, and we talk about decisions in marriage, a conscious decision to love him and think enough for our own relationship to realize that this was a teaching moment from him, and that I thought, what can I do so then in the future, when I get angry like that, I'm going to shut my mouth up. So I had a visualization of, okay, when I get angry, put my tongue, like clench my teeth with my tongue, almost like bite your tongue. And that has 30 years that has stuck with me.
And of course,
Wow.
like I've never said anything that would ever cause that.
Of course
I'm like,
not.
of course, I mean, I'm so perfect. I would never do something like that. Well, of course I have. And it's, respect, saying something like that was that's a trigger. And for her, a quick example was we were playing Trivial Pursuit. I love Trivial. I love trivia.
Oh no,
she hated it.
You do.
She hated it.
We're mirroring each other here.
So we're
bromance, May. There's a name for it. Okay.
So she's on my team, and so we're playing this other couple, and
I didn't want to play, and he kept shaming me into
playing.
Come on,
honey, play the game. So they asked her a question, and I thought it was there was an easy answer to it, and she gave the wrong answer, and I said, "Come on, honey, you're not that dumb." So right, so that's a trigger. And so what happened was the game was over. She trotted up the steps. Smash goes the door, and I'm like, "Ooh, okay."
Silent treatment for longer than 24 hours.
But it's how you handle it afterwards. Yeah. You don't want to do it, but we're all human.
Yeah.
It's dealing with the fallout afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next step to that is really wild. And I can't even remember who told me this, but it was one of my friends who also was quite wise. And he said, you realize that we're going to wound our children in ways we have no idea that we're doing it. And now that we have grown children and they're, we've been very open, with being able to communicate with each other. It's amazing. It's the stuff that you never, ever, ever in a million years considered was ever an issue. But that was something that, one of the kids took as, this is really, really bad, and I'm being judged or whatever. And like, there's kind of a funny story with regards to that. Our son, what I would do,
it's a parenting lesson.
He was kind of, as they say he was quite defiant as a 3 to 5 year old.
I said he would have been a delinquent if we hadn't have rode his ass from when he was terrible twos, terrible threes, terrible fours, and on.
I think we were at a drag race or something, and there was some kid that was should have known better, acting up, and he turns to me. You'd have been 15 or so at the time. He goes, "Dad, thanks for beating my ass."
But you didn't beat him.
I know, but it's a cool.
Anyway, he's got a big heart and is a sweet kid. And
but it was interesting because what I would do physically, and was if he was acting up and wouldn't look at me and we couldn't communicate, I'd grab him by the back of the neck right there.
And turn him so that he would have to go eye to eye.
So he would have to go eye to eye with me. Well, I don't think anything of that. I'm like, this is, it's some physical dominance, which I don't think is a bad thing. It's all about talking. We're not hitting him. It's just like, what's the big deal? He told us we're on a family vacation at Christmas time. And he said, to this day, if anyone approaches me from the back, I'm on like mega alert and I'm ready to go in to do violence.
Yeah, and he's like in the military now, and so he's like he goes all like Krav Maga on people whenever they touch his neck because it.
I'm like, you're welcome.
Scarred him.
You're welcome.
Childhood.
Yeah.
And our daughter says it's almost the same thing.
And he's going to do that to his kids.
But
Yeah, but
that's
it'll be in some different way, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, you know, what you talk about is so important. I think to kind of like dovetail that a little bit, if you think that your kids, when they're young, don't know what's going on, they don't have a grip, you're really missing the boat, because they'll bring something up later on that happened that you thought had no relevance at all, and we're seeing that now, and fortunately it's positive stuff. But what we would do is, we knew that in order to be good parents, we had to spend time on ourselves. Unfortunately, we had the ability to go away and do that. And then the kids would come up to us and say, "Mommy and Daddy, can we go away with you?" And we would say, "No, this is just for Mommy and Daddy. We'll have it. There'll be a family vacation that you guys will go with us. But this is to work on our relationship, or, you know, our being together, so we can come back and be good parents for you." And you can't just say that once. Every time we would repeat it, and then they understood. And because they saw that when we spent time on ourselves, that that it was, you know, it was such a better dynamic for them, and they picked up on that.
No,
I love that you said that, because, you know, we raised our kids, our family, such that, you know, God's the head of the household, then the marriage, and then the kids. And it doesn't mean that they're not important and they have their time too. But if everything revolves around the kids, I mean, I think that's makes your kids selfish, as well as it's not healthy for the marriage. And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, and I'm, you know, friends and patients who get to the phase of life when they're living for their kids, and then they have nothing else. The marriage starts to crumble, and they go, "Well, what happened?" And I'm like, "Well, what did you think was going to happen when you're not nurturing your relationship?"
No, when the most important relationship in your marriage is your kids, then you end up with the UAW, where you have a union that's so strong that guys can come to work drunk and not get fired.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, who did that? Who did that? Was that, you know, the UAW? No, they took what the companies were willing to give them. The company gave, you know, General Motors and Ford and Chrysler gave their businesses away. You know, there's no union at Toyota because there doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
You know, because they understand the we don't get cars without the employees, but you know what? The employees don't get bonuses without a really strong management system. And so that's how it's supposed to work. And people just look at us stunned sometimes. They say the kids aren't the most important part of your family. I'm like, no, our marriage is.
Yes, exactly.
Ask anybody that is a child of divorce, and they'll tell you, they'll be 50 years old and they'll tell you it was still the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. And I know so many people that take their kids everywhere that they go, and you can see the results of it. You can see the arguing. You could see the, you know, it's like you really haven't gotten a break away from work. It's like you've there,
been parenting the whole time.
You're paying attention to keeping them entertained. You're not spending any time on yourselves, and it's just you can just tell. I in people that we coach, people that I see, and we'll say, I bet they haven't been away together for a long time for whatever reason. And if you can avoid that, you really, really, it's essential to.
It's, I think, probably one of the, I don't know, the harder things, but you know, you hear it probably with have heard it with patients in the past where it's almost the martyr thing, because it's like they're not taking care of themselves because they're busy taking care of their caregiver for a sick family member or an aging parent or maybe a handicapped child, but they let themselves go. They have no hobbies. They're out of shape. They're overweight because they have no time to exercise. And it's like, well, there's no time for me because of this. And they're you know, they're excuses. But the same thing with marriages. It's just like, well, we don't have time because of the kids and the work and the whatever. And I don't know. It's very, I find that almost the toughest, to not beat into people's heads and friends, but say, no, you have to work on this, because if you don't, the foundation is going to crumble, and it's too hard. It's not too hard, but it's much harder to go back and try to knit that all together than to work on it now. And I don't know if you have any other tips.
Well, you know
for
what
that.
we do is say, have you guys ever gone away by yourselves on a vacation besides your honeymoon? When you were gone and when you were together, did you have fun? And did you reconnect? Was your communication a lot better? Did you feel energized when you came back? And oftentimes it'll be like, yeah. And it's like, so why can't you do that now? I know we'll even say, I know that you have to do this and you have to do that, but where do you value your relationship? Where do you value your marriage? Because that is made better when you work on yourselves, when you're away from your kids, when you're away from work, and it's just the two of you. And it's just something that for whatever. So you have to go back and use an example like that for them to get the meaning and to understand that.
Yeah. And it's about, think of the word neglect, right? If we neglect our bodies, what happens? If we neglect our relationships, what happens? They fall apart. If we neglect our children, neglect is a bad word. So, just think about that, because, you never want to neglect your children. You need to have that same attitude. You cannot neglect your relationship. It is a living, breathing, dynamic coexistence that needs nurtured.
So something popped into my head here, which I think it's a massive pet peeve of mine, and I know it is of May's as well. How often, especially when you're counseling, physician couples or professionals, do you rub up against this "you can have it all" phenomenon, and what do you say to people about that?
I would say you can have it. It depends on what the definition of all is. To my definition, all is you have a good relationship. You've raised however many kids that you have. You made respectful, really, really good kids. You have time to go away with each other. You have a good set of friends, and you have a good relationship with God. And those are the things. That's having it all. Are each of those perfect? No, but if you've got that, you've got more than what most people have. But yes, because you do run into
we see a lot, and I think it's a real trap. We've noticed this in a podcast group that we are in, and everyone is got to be like the mega specialist, plus being a financial coach, plus being able to retire by 50.
Side gigs are the new
plus
thing.
Yes.
Which
plus have 3 kids, all of which are doing piano, ballet, and soccer.
Plus be fit and go to your Orange Theory.
And I'm just sitting there, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, prioritize what you want. Okay, for some people, fitness is super, super important. Okay, so that's going to go higher up the chain. For some people, early retirement is super important, so they're going to have to make major sacrifices to achieve that. That's why I was never really in our vernacular. But this idea that like you're going to be the Instagram, superstar, and the side business superstar, and the orthopedic surgeon superstar. No, you're going to be a superstar at 2 or 3 things, and the rest you can dabble in if that's part of what you like. But that's it. It's like 2 or 3 things, and you got to have those pillars and say, this is the stuff that's really, really important. So the only way you get better at anything is time.
Yep.
And everyone has the exact same amount of time in every single day. And so you have to prioritize that based on what's super important to you and what's super important to your family. Otherwise, it's just chaos. And I like the Oprahification of the country, I call it. It's like speak to the universe and the universe will speak back. Yeah, but sometimes the universe says you're a dick. You know?
Yeah.
So
and if you want all of that, something's going to suffer.
Yeah, there's a trade-off. There is
there's
a trade-off. There's an opportunity cost I
think it's delusional to think that's really a possibility, because cracks start to develop, and then you start thinking, okay, well, why is there this crack? And then if you do self-reflection, like you said, and look at what's going on, then you start to think, okay, well, yeah, maybe I'm doing too much. And as we get older, time is the most important thing. Time with the people that we love, our friends, our family, because you never get that back. And once a second's gone, it's gone.
And the cracks are insidious.
Yeah.
They're happening in real time, and we're not aware of them. And pretty soon the crack becomes the cavern, right? Yeah. And then, you either don't recover from that, or wow, you're really having to work really, really hard to put something back together.
And what do people say at the end of their lives? Do they say,
to your point,
do they say, oh, I should have worked harder at my job, or I didn't make enough money, or this or no, they say, I wish I had more time with my wife. I wish I spent more time with my family. And unfortunately that gets lost. And then you see these regrets. I mean, everybody has regrets, but you have the ability to prevent a lot of them. And because when you start having those regrets, and you have an illness that you're not going to recover from, or you're getting older and you're there, you want to have as few as possible and be happy that enough time is never enough, but you want to say, gee, I'm so happy that I had this relationship with my kids, or I was able to spend, some quality time in my relationship with my wife. And if you don't have that, then that's stuff spiritually, especially, that it's sad when you come to that realization.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, May and I have always been into like a lot of physical activity. I used to run marathons, and then I got injured and recently, like 5 years ago. And then it was amazing. It was amazing. Like I couldn't run anymore, which was my primary source of endorphins / weight control. And then all of a sudden you start gaining weight, because it was way easier to drink a couple martinis and watch TV than it was getting up at 5:30.
Yeah.
And it just, like, it's insidious, and you slide. And then by the time you wake up, you're like, holy crap. I got to get my, what together again.
I have 50 pounds to lose.
Right. I got 50 pounds, or I got, whatever. And you sit there and you go, okay, I'm going to do it again. And it's amazing, because I just hired a trainer, which I haven't ever done in my entire life.
Someone else telling him to get off his ass instead of me.
And
I need to do that too, Tim.
Just the spending of the money.
Pay a lot of money for it.
But it's fascinating, because you look back and you go, well, you're going to change your fitness the same way you lost it, which is day by day, choice by choice, little incremental stuff.
Yep.
And it's easy to understand that when you've been fit, and then you're going back on a program, or you're going on a diet or whatever. But what people don't get is diets are completely meaningless unless it's a change that you can maintain for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
You still have to do it every time. But it's super easy to take your spouse for granted and go, well, that'll just take care of itself. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? It won't take care of itself. Mm-hmm. And if you thought losing 40 pounds was hard, wait till you have to cut your net worth in half. I mean.
Yes. Have you seen our website title?
Yeah. It's just like, it is.
I've been through divorce. It is one of the worst things I've ever been through in my life. It is traumatic. And
it doesn't have to happen. It just doesn't. It
can
be prevented.
really, I mean, this could be a whole episode in itself, but to this question, what about that part when marriages grow apart, but one both spouses changes from, you married this person and these were your list of important things. And then, we all change with time and our interests change and hopefully you're growing together. But
Mhm.
say one person is going off, veering off one direction, or say both of you are. I mean, what are your sort of thoughts on bringing that together? So for instance, say, it's for better, for worse, it's supposed to be, and you're supposed to be selfless. But say someone
Mhm.
does, becomes an alcoholic with a drinking issue, or they get really out of shape and overweight, and you used to be athletic buddies together, or I don't know, someone decides to be a gypsy when they used to be a conservative Audrey Hepburn type. I don't know,
You
but
mean they became a Democrat?
what I'm saying is, some people radically change and
Yes.
not the way that you signed up for, and sometimes it's both of you. So how do you negotiate that, or
Well,
what do you say?
let me give you an example, and I don't think that this is this is just irrelevant to just us. I mean, I just Tim and I's favorite subject, the bedroom. So you go, you go in, and things that were great all of a sudden aren't. Things that you used to do all of a sudden they're either an issue or there's no desire for that anymore. And this has been, it's been an issue that I've struggled with, and we've talked about this quite a bit. And it's realizing, and I, sometimes I feel like an idiot because I'm a doctor. I understand aging from a male and a female perspective, but sometimes it's like you want what you want, and you're not thinking about, okay, well, she's over here, and there's a reason why she's not feeling as frisky as she used to feel in the past.
In
Or
the past, how about when I was 28?
well, but
That was only 5 years ago, so I'm really not sure what we're discussing.
so it's like, and she had to bring up to me, a doctor who should know better, to say, it's just not the desire. It has nothing to do with you. It's just the way it is. And I have seen that break people apart. So it all, I know it's trite, but it comes down to communication. If you start to see, May, like you said, there's a problem with alcohol, or you're starting to see, well, your spouse partner's not coming home at the same hour every night. You say, okay, well, why do you this is kind of near and dear to Vanessa because her ex-husband was an alcoholic, but why all of a sudden are you needing to drink more? Is there something that I don't know about, that you're afraid to be vulnerable about, that you want to talk to me about? What's going on? Because it's more than just the fact that you want, that you like to drink. There's something behind that. Or why are you not coming home until 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock, long after office hours? Because, as and this happened with my dad. There was infidelity there, and he always used the excuse of, to my mom, while I'm making rounds, or I'm going to a drug dinner, or I'm meeting with the CEO. So there's such an easy ability to break that trust. So when you see those kind of things, you head them off at the pass. So if it is a change, you communicate, okay, I see that you're doing that. I understand why. Move a little bit, but if you let it go and you don't say anything, then you get to a point where you didn't have to get to the hard feelings that obviously are going to occur because of it.
And
Yeah, it's fascinating because I heard this is a loose connection I had that I grew up with in high school, and he had he saved his marriage, but he was unfaithful, and his advice was don't ever let another woman become your best friend.
yeah,
And
that's why we're called best friends again.
Yes,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
so we did an episode, over a year ago, and we called it Tim and May, a friend story, or
a like story.
a like story. And the fact is that you can fall in love. Okay, it's falling. Guess what? Falling. I mean, I'm a skydiver, so there's falling that really is falling with style. But generally, falling requires zero skill. That's not a skill. Friendship is an entirely different thing. And I think, to maybe kind of button this up a little bit, the goal of a marriage should be a mutually beneficial partnership, which means it brings in finances, it brings in sex, it brings in, work roles, raising children, etc. All these really important things, and they're important things for an entire society. But when it comes down to the end of the day, if May and I are married for another 30 years and, we're on rocking chairs and whatever, what do I want to be left with? I want to be left with somebody that I like.
Yeah.
And we go, wasn't it awesome that we killed that dragon and we kicked ass and we built that business and we communicated to people and we had an effect? But you know what? At year 60 or year 61, does that really matter if you're sitting next to somebody you can't stand?
Yeah.
It doesn't, and it's sad. It's sad if that's happening.
And to your point, and what you said about your site being best friends again. I mean, a lot of people I chat with, my girlfriends, people are surprised when they say, "Yeah, I say my husband is my best friend." I'm like, really? Your husband's your best friend, not your girlfriend? I'm like, well, wouldn't you want your spouse to be your best friend? I mean, that's hello.
It seems simple, doesn't it?
Right. But I mean, and that's the key, I think, right there. It starts with that.
The thing that helped me when I was with my ex was, and what I said finally came down to it was, I could take that horse to water. Like, I took him to water so many times. So that was communication, right? And talking about it. But I could not make him drink. So there has to be willingness in the other partner to want to do it. If there is, you can't build a marriage or a relationship on one person.
No.
So.
No.
I've said that so many times. I said, marriages are not based on love. They're based on trust. If trust is irrevocably broken and you can never trust the person again, you can't be married. So you can forgive them. You can not want to punish them, but you're not going to really have a marriage if you don't trust them. And
you got to go back to trusting.
Yeah.
Right. And the second thing I say to people is, I have counseled gazillions of people with regards to this, and it's like, well, this really bad thing happened. There was this terrible infidelity or whatever. Can you repair your marriage? Can we repair our marriage? I said, of course you can.
Yes.
There's no question you can. The question is if you're both willing to try.
Yep.
Because if one person has utterly, totally given up, then you're done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, is there reasons?
Exactly.
Is there reasons to get divorced? Well, yeah. If there's irrevocable trust and one person's totally given up, you're done.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I'll just give you an example. We know a couple that there was infidelity when they were engaged. Then there was infidelity twice after they were married by her, and then infidelity. So, but they came back from that because there was, even when all this stuff was going on, they felt like that there was enough there that they could build on to come back from. Now that is it's a ridiculously extreme type of an example, but it's to make the point that if you really do see value in what you have together, and there's a willingness for both of you to work to come back from it, you can.
I just thought of the mustard seed, right?
Right.
If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that desire, you can make it.
I love it.
That's a perfect place to button this up. Everyone we interview, we're like, well, we could do this for 4 hours.
We could talk forever. So I want you to share with everyone your book title and your webpage and where people can find you if they want to reach out to you.
My book is What's Forever for a Physician's Guide to Everlasting Love and Success in Marriage. And it was a labor of love, like this discussion with you guys. It feel the same way. It's on our website. You can order it from there. It's on Amazon. And
our website is www.bestfriendsagain.com.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds.
And I'll link those in the show notes. I'll link your book as well. I didn't read it word by word, but I did read through the whole thing last night, and it's great. I mean, I love the stories that you tell as real world examples of couples. So that makes it great as examples. There's some study questions, which is really helpful, and some really great stuff in there. So
when she was done reading it, she wasn't any more frisky. So I'm going to reserve my judgment.
Sorry about that, Tim. I didn't spend enough time on that in the book.
But there was a quote in there that I loved that I was poking him because I think he was snoring at that point.
She was cackling.
It was I forgot the guy's name. His first name was Jorge Luis something, that said, sometimes if you can't say anything, silence is better.
Yes.
No, if you can't say anything better than silence,
then yes. Well, I'm going to use that from now on.
Well,
sometimes
Thumper. I think Thumper said that in Bambi. You know, Bambi's mother said, or Thumper's mother said, if you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything at all.
Yeah, there you go.
And then Bambi got shot.
Bambi got shot.
Yeah, Bambi got shot. And remember in Bambi when Bambi's mother got shot? Yeah. All the clouds came by, and you could see all the smoke and everything. Oh, traumatic.
It was.
Who shoots a
That's horrible
doe?
for kids. That's like
what kind of useless
R-rated
hunter
movie
shoots
for
a
children.
doe?
Remember Bambi.
I cried. It was awful. Anyway. All right, this has been great. We will definitely have you guys back on because we have to get to the big S topic for our next session.
Yes.
And Tim's looking at me with like wild eyes. I don't know if he's confused.
No,
or
I know
excited.
exactly what you're doing. No, we'll definitely do a DocTales, and who was that? There was that one commentator that was on that Best Damn Show period or Best Damn Sports Show period.
Yeah.
Right. And they drink beers and they talk about sports. Yeah. It was on Fox like 20 years ago. And he was like, well, like being married to a guy wouldn't be so bad. Like, think about it. It's like, you sit there and it's like, do you want to watch football? Of course I want to watch football. Hey, I'm up. Do you want another beer? Of course I want another beer. He goes, everything would be really easy and compatible other than the sex, which would be horrific. And I'm like,
was that Tom Arnold?
It was Tom Arnold. Yeah. Tom Arnold. And he goes, it would be repugnant and horrific. But again, negotiating the good and the bad, maybe not, and he's just doing his kind of bit. And you sit there and you go, people try to either make everything about sex or nothing about sex. And clearly that's not the answer. So we'll get to that in another episode.
Absolutely.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
It's been a joy, guys. Can't wait to do it again.
Well, that was fun. And we're going to have them on again for sure for a DocTales where we have like sex therapy time or something like that with some sort of.
I think that'd be great.
Some sort of cocktail.
The big, I don't know, the big takeaway, just talking with them. We're both like entering 30 years of I don't know, they might have had their anniversary, but we're both like at 30 years of marriage. And just the big thing for me is just trust communication and living selflessly is really kind of the theme of what we talked about.
Well, it is. It is. And that's why his book, What is Forever For, is actually successful. Mine would have been, Success in Marriage, Get Naked and Make Me a Sandwich.
Of course. So I obviously in the
Less
show
successful.
notes, I'm diverting from you. Link his book. It's actually great. It's really good read as far as it's got questions. You can work through it together, individually. It would be good for small groups or coaching if you did it as a Bible study / small group coaching as well. So anyway, and then I'm going to wait to see what happens with that Doc Tales with Cocktails episode, Tim, because he's getting all excited for it. I think he's going to make the cocktail now.
Get naked and make me a sandwich!
Before we go, don't forget to reach out to Michael Ralvis at MR Insurance. Their goal is to assist physicians in obtaining the most comprehensive coverage available to fit their unique situation. Reach out for both excellent and quality service at bsfreemd.com/MR Insurance. Can't wait to see you next time to see what we've got up our sleeves.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
While we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible, we can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.
That's a great title for a book, though. Get Naked and Make Me a Sandwich. Tim Hindmarsh's Guide to Success to a Successful Marriage.
I don't know. It kind of has like a Gary Larson Far Side feel to it.
Right, like that. Like there was that. Was it Far Side or Herman? I can't remember. One of those cartoons. I think it was Far Side. And there's this picture of this guy, and he's in total in the hospital and in total traction, and like all of his limbs are broken, and it said all Frank did is go to the National Convention for the National Association for Women and say the greatest thing to happen to women's rights was the automatic transmission.
Oh my gosh. Don't let that happen to you. Bye.